1 minute past midday here in Moscow this Wednesday afternoon. Thanks for choosing RT, Thursday afternoon, I should say, for your news update this hour. My name's Ewan O'Neill. Our top story this hour: Afghanistan now feels like a more dangerous place than it did 4 years ago, according to the leader of a US congressional delegation which visited the country this week, specifying the rise of the ISIS branch in the region known as ISIS-K. Jim Banks and 6 others had to leave on Tuesday, just as they'd learned of a suicide bombing in the Afghan capital. Well, the attack on a religious celebration in Kabul is one of the deadliest this year, killing 55 and injuring close to 100 others. Islamic State is suspected of carrying out the bombing. There has been a wave of bloody violence in recent weeks in which hundreds have died, as militants step up their assaults amid a flurry of diplomatic efforts to end the 17-year war on terror. Yet, in all that time, more recently unveiled research shows it's had a severely limited effect on tackling extremism.
The horrendous attacks that took place on September 11th, 2001, in which nearly 3,000 people lost their lives, were followed up by the launch of the U.S. War on Terror. Now, that was 17 years ago, and the war on terror is still taking place. It's certainly produced results, but not the kind of results that many were expecting. A new study shows that at this point, there are roughly 4 times as many jihadists in the world as there were at the time of the 9/11 attacks. At this point, there's 230,000 militants spread across 70 different countries.
While the United States and allied governments have weakened some groups, many of the underlying causes of terrorism have not been adequately addressed. Sunni Arab disenfranchisement has been among the most important causes of instability and an important source of recruits.
But how can this be? By 2019, the USA will have spent $5.9 trillion on counterterrorism operations and activities. And at this point, researchers are saying that the U.S. military brass lacks a coherent roadmap.
There is no strategy to end the wars other than more of the same, in the hope that one day Iraqi and Afghan security forces will be able to fend for themselves.
Now, the costs are not simply financial, but also come in terms of human lives. The latest study indicates that roughly 500,000 people have died as a result of America's post-9/11 wars. Now, that only includes Iraq, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, with the authors of the study saying that with other countries included, the numbers would be much higher. Now, there's no sign that America's drones, missiles, and tax dollars will stop rolling anytime soon.
The art is to have sufficient forces engaged and sufficient political engagement, sufficient economic resources to make sure that we're putting pressure and disrupting those networks.
The current administration, just like the Obama administration, believes that it does not need any additional authorization to use force against al-Qaeda, the Taliban, or ISIS.
We're not leaving based on a timetable.
Terrorism is something that all civilized people oppose. Working to eradicate it is certainly an honorable goal. However, with such dismal results at such a high human cost, perhaps the overall strategy of the war on terror should be reconsidered. Caleb Maupin, RT, New York.
Companies and several people involved in selling Iranian oil to Syria.
The United States today sanctioned an international network that the Iranian regime and Russia are using to provide millions of barrels of oil to the Assad regime. This is in exchange for the movement of hundreds of millions of dollars to the IRGC Quds Force. That money is then passed on to terrorist organizations like Hezbollah and Hamas.
Well, this is what we know. The new sanctions focus on 1 Iranian company and 2 Russia-based oil companies, while the 6 individuals targeted are from various countries, including Iran and Russia.